All right, perfect. Can Jack, do you want to say a prayer?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, man.
Our dear Father in heaven, we are so very grateful for this wonderful day and for the time that we have to spend together as a group to discuss how we can overcome challenges in the industry, being organized and communicating effective leadership. We're so very grateful for our many blessings and pray for this in the name of thy son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 All
Amen.
right, thanks, man. Um,
Yeah.
so this week, so I'm just pulling up these questions here really quick. Um, if my computer wants to load, then I would be able to help you guys. All right, so this week we have the whole office politics, where it seems like some people are a little frustrated with the way individuals are working, or maybe the factor is that they're frustrated that their promotion maybe happened, maybe the promotion did happen a little too early, and things of that nature. But where where do you guys stand as far as what's the underlying factor as far as what we can see?
Kind of a broad question. I would say pride, like a lack of humility on a lot of parts, in my opinion.
Okay. So like what I guess maybe let's take it from somebody's standpoint. So we'll take it from the McDonald lady, was her name Shannon or something?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if you're Shannon, where do you stand on what the underlying issue is? Do you see it with Green or Davis, or where do you see the problem at?
Well, Green, I think, sort of had a mark already on his back before he even started, and McDonald even exclaimed that when she did give him the promotion and everything. And so he was sort of going into it sounds bad, but into a gunfight with a knife. And
Hmm.
however, what Patrick said was humility and pride. Pride wasn't the issue. I think if if Green has settled down and just really said, okay, I'm the new guy, I need to just settle down and really glean to Davis, even though Davis may be a big jerk and everything, but there's a lot of politics involved in, so he should have just sort of laid low and not contradict him. And he even had like a meeting up front with him how the operation should go about.
Right,
Yeah.
I like that.
It's also hard when your boss's boss is the one that hires you. And
Hmm.
so he almost feels like he is under McDonald, when in reality he is under Davis. And I think that right off the bat did cause some of the problems because he saw himself as, in a sense, McDonald's employee rather than really working under Davis. And I think that kind of caused some of the problems as well. I mean, of course, there was pride involved and everything like that. But if I was McDonald, I would see it from that standpoint. I would see it as Davis is trying to be a boss. He's trying to be a manager, and Green is, you know, not communicating well and not respecting Davis's wishes. Which is, I mean, you got to respect your boss's wishes in some ways.
Yeah, I wonder if Davis feels that his toes have kind of been stepped on, because the reading was talking about how he thought he was going to be able to hire the person for Green's position, because
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, he Davis was in that position, and then he got promoted too and stuff. I
Mhm.
wonder if maybe he feels just because of the relationship that McDonald has with Green, they kind of went behind his back and hired Green, kind of not talking to Davis about it. And um, so the next question, it says like, what do you find interesting about it? But I think maybe we can kind of turn that to like, what so like what should we do, if you can take anybody's side, Davis, Green, or McDonald, but like, what do you do?
Well, I
I
think
think
in this. Oh, go ahead.
I think the person that has the most action to be taken is probably Green. I think that I think everyone in a way is at fault here, right? I think all of them have opportunity, but I think Green has the most opportunity. He's obviously really bright and he's a great salesperson. That's why he got the role, right? But he needs to continue to be teachable. He needs to take a step back, like was already said, and he needs to listen to Davis, who's been in that role for who knows how long, who knows how it should be run. Like, he's coming in with the mentality that, hey, I'm going to, fix all these issues that exist that may not exist, right? So he's coming in and he's completely like wanting to change the whole strategy, which isn't necessarily a wrong thing, right? Like, maybe there are a lot of things that need to be changed, but when you come into a new role like that, you have to come in with almost an observation point of view. You need to know what's not working correctly before you can change it. You're not going to come in and know what you need to do right away. And so I think
definitely.
the most opportunity in just being humble and teachable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
However, in the management, I've found over the years has changed where when a new person comes in, I think it is the manager's responsibility to come in and talk to subordinate or whatever you want to call Green is to Davis and explain to him the culture that there is a subculture in that company that doesn't just exist, because he might understand what McDonald was saying, but under McDonald, there's another culture with Davis, and so I think Davis needs to take the time to really illustrate, hey, scheduling is very, very important to me. Whereas Green was like, I don't understand why he's ripping me apart for not scheduling all these minute details when I was doing what I thought was the best for the company.
Yeah, I think it's really good, Joseph. I saw that as one of the problems. Really, is that Davis had expectations, but it didn't really seem like those expectations were communicated to Green. I mean, he was doing what he thought he was supposed to be doing, and then Davis kind of grilled him for things, he just kind of grilled him for some things that he wasn't doing that he didn't really know he needed to do. Now, I mean, that's kind of like the first move. The problem goes back to Green, where after that, Green didn't change anything he was doing, which is that's when it's on him. The first time he kind of gets grilled, it's kind of, okay, well, Davis, you didn't tell me to begin with. But after he's been told what the expectations are, he still didn't live up to those expectations. And I think that's why Davis is so, is to the point where he wants to get rid of him.
So I just kind of got a question for you. So I think Green possibly might have been hired a little prematurely. And I am curious. So they talk about how there's advances as far as in their group, in their, I guess, their team, their company, things like that. Do you think McDonald needs to go back to Green and possibly take away the promotion and kind of start him through the progression so he has the opportunity to learn?
I personally don't think so. I think the situation is not just the talent. I think talent is there. It's both sides. Granted, could McDonald have chosen someone else and done the whole process a little bit different? Yeah, but that's hindsight 2020. I think right now what has to be addressed is there is a real problem here, and it's not about talent. It's really about how Davis and Green communicate, and there is none. I mean, it talks about in the article that Green just basically avoids Davis at all costs, and then Davis is like, building up his own assumptions and stuff like that. And what really comes to, as the phrase goes, what does assume mean? It's, makes you an ass out of you and me. So the fact that there's too much assumptions that have gone around, and both both have pie in their face and don't really want to fess up to that. Both have an ownership in the problems that are going on. If they would just sit down, with a try to come up with a win-win contract, as you know, what we're reading in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, then I think there could be a real progression going on with this relationship.
I totally agree. I think that they could actually have like a really amazing partnership, because Green, from the way we read it, is probably a better salesman. And he has some really innovative ideas and things that he wants to do to take the displays to another level. But he isn't as focused on maybe getting some of the proofs that Davis knows some of the corporate executives like to see and things like that. He just wants to have the face-to-face. He wants to close the deal. But sometimes you're not going to have the face-to-face, and you have to have supporting evidence to get that meeting. And Davis might know some of those things a little bit better than Green does. So, I mean, you put them together and they could probably do some really amazing stuff, but they're just not working together.
Right on. So Davis he's clearly had conversations with Green about his lack of abilities. Doesn't seem like he ever boosts him up or anything like that. So how do you think Davis fixes the situation with Green? Because Davis sent an email saying, hey, I'm pretty much done with this guy. He's useless to me. But on the flip side, Green's shown that he is good at getting clients and things like that. And he has a couple things to work on as far as paperwork, data, and whatnot. But so what does Davis do? How does he approach the situation if we're saying, yeah, Green's good at his job, if he'd just be a little bit more efficient?
I think they need to have a day with McDonald, for one. I think they need to all get in a room together, and that way McDonald can be somewhat of a mediator in a way, and just really go over all of the opportunities that they have as a team, and the things they need to focus on. I mean, I think Green, for the most part, a lot of his stuff is, I don't know, I guess you could say associated to emotional intelligence. He's been doing a little bit of like backbiting with other people in the company against Davis and things like that, which breeds negativity. So they need to squash that. And they all have to meet and kind of come to grips with what they need to do.
Okay, so kind of you think it's Davis. You're saying Davis isn't going to fix himself. He needs all three of them there. McDonald as well. Then
I think that it would help to have a third party there to kind of see both sides to where it is, and their manager, I think, would be the most appropriate person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of going off of that, and kind of almost going off of that and changing it a little bit, going back to McDonald. You know, for her, it's not just about Green. You got to think that Davis was also just promoted. And if your manager, who is just promoted, within 4 months of the new guy who took his place being hired, is trying to say that he needs to be let go and that nothing's being done, you also have to question your manager. So I think it would be unfair for McDonald just to assume that, oh, Green's doing something wrong and he's not doing very well. She also needs to say, what is my manager doing? Because I've met Green. He seems like he was pretty good. And if there's a problem, this definitely has to be two-sided. And is it really him who's lacking, or is it my manager, Davis, who isn't doing a good job? So I think that's something that she needs to go in. If they were to have this whole, the three of them come in together and talk, and she's the mediator, it can't be all about Green. And I think that McDonald, hopefully she would know that, and she would also focus and worry a bit about Davis. Because, I mean, anytime a manager is going out and saying, oh, this guy needs to be fired, it's weird. Most managers would try to help the situation for at least a little bit longer before immediately going and trying to throw out a new hire,
I really like that you bring that up, because I don't think that this is just Green's unable to do his job. I think Green just needs to understand what he needs to do. When you come to a meeting, you need to have hard numbers to be able to point out, because anybody can just sit there and talk and tell you how you can save money, or you can do this better or that, or how we can help you, whatever the situation is. But I think, Davis just, for some reason, it's almost like he's out to get Green, which kind of comes into this other question. So, do we think that for Davis, this is like a political office statement from him that he's in power? He was just put in power, so he needs to be a ruler or an authoritative figure in the office?
Well, I feel that, as Green is trying to earn his stripes, same with Davis. And I think there's a lot of things that just I guess didn't start off right, and from there it hasn't really progressed. And I like what are you guys familiar who Dave Ramsey is?
Yeah.
Okay, Dave Ramsey, he once stated, when you need to fire someone, you always have to look inwards and figure out you're the problem, not that person. Because if you haven't set out the clear expectations and everything, that person will quit. Because they know that if they want to be part of the team, there is an expectation. And if that expectations are not met, they will, if they're truly a team player, they'll actually leave on their own. And I've taken that to heart as I try to run my business here, is that I don't want. And he said, anytime you fire someone, you think it's right, I mean, in a moral stance, it's almost like you're losing your soul. And right there, I think when I'm hearing Davis, he needs to be fired, I feel like he doesn't want to take the opportunity to look inward and say, hey, is it me? So.
Right on. How do you, so we've kind of talked about Davis a little bit, but kind of going back to McDonald at the beginning of this deal, they talk about how they have a great relationship, and not just as far as work, but also kind of as friends. How does McDonald approach Green? Just as a friend, or is it just strictly this is work, this is what you need to fix, or how does McDonald go about that?
I think it's too soon to fire him. And so that being the case, I think, at the very end, it showed kind of the email that McDonald sent Green, basically saying, what's your take on this? What's your point of view? And I think it does need to be a very professional conversation that she has with him. But, professional conversations can also be pretty friendly between friends. And I think that's the kind of approach she needs to have. She needs to show that, she still does have some hope in what he's doing. She still has some support in him, that they're still friends. But she wants to know, hey, I'm getting these responses from my manager, and I need to know why. I need to know what's going on. And Green would understand that. I mean, anyone would understand if your boss's boss comes to you and says, hey, I'm getting these responses from your boss. I don't really know what's going on. Tell me what's going on. That's the way she needs to approach it. She needs to take everything that Davis is saying with a grain of salt, and she needs to do the same with Green. She needs to get everyone's side and look at the whole.
I like that, and I like how she sent out that email towards the end, just saying, hey, I need to hear your side of the story also. I think a lot of times that doesn't always happen. We get one side of the story and we immediately start to attack somebody or reprimand them or something like that. What about you, Jack? What are your thoughts there?
I think she needs to also be clear that Davis is his boss. It's like you need to make sure that you're listening to him, but also learning from him. He was in your position. He's obviously going to have a little bit of passion in this role that Green has, because it was his role. It was his territory. Any contracts and accounts and businesses that are in that region, he probably got and he developed. So he might be a little bit more passionate about Green for that reason. And like I said, I think that she needs to convey the message that there's a lot of things that he can learn from Davis, and that he might not necessarily be taking the opportunity to do that.
I like that. Let's see here. So I guess one of the things that I think about is Green. Green obviously feels that Davis probably doesn't like him, and that Davis's goals are pretty outlandish. Do you think Green needs to step in and maybe go to McDonald and say, look, these are the more realistic goals, kind of overstep Davis and take that approach? Or where do you think Green should go from here?
Well, he even said, like, Green is used to having like a sales approach to thinking instead of a marketing approach. And when marketing, you're trying to sell yourself, so it isn't maybe always realistic numbers, but it's potential numbers, and that's what Davis understands, and Green doesn't because he hasn't had the marketing training. So I think, because Green he hasn't really stepped into the marketing world yet, so he's kind of lost in that regard.
And it for sure would be frustrating when you're given a goal that you know up front that you don't think that you can succeed in, because when you get to those levels in management, if you don't get those goals or you don't reach those goals, your job could be on the line. So I mean, it would definitely make me nervous, but it's a matter of how you handle it. And I don't think that bringing it up in that meeting and questioning Davis's numbers in front of the entire group was the right way to go about it. If you have questions about it, talk to Davis one-on-one, and even say that. It's like, hey, in the meeting, I felt these feelings, but I knew it wasn't appropriate to maybe share with the group, and I wanted to talk to you one-on-one, because I think Davis could really respect that he didn't want to, get everyone on his side or whatever, just in the group meeting. It would be pretty frustrating to see those numbers and to know that, gosh, if I don't reach these numbers in a year, they might kick me out of here,
Yeah, that'd be a little nerve-wracking, having some goals that you think are not attainable whatsoever.
Yeah, but you also got to see from Davis's point of view. He was in Green's position for years. He knows that market. He knows what's going on. So his goal is an educated goal. I mean, maybe it is very optimistic, but it is an educated, goal. I mean, he didn't just choose a number. And so I could see where who's been in a position for that long, gets promoted. And it doesn't really specify, but he might have even come up with that goal before he was promoted. So that just is kind of the goal that was left. So you can see his frustration when that's what he came up with. And then this brand new guy comes in. You say, yeah, this is the goal. And Green just goes, oh, no, that's way too high. I mean, you can see how that as a manager, you'd be like, well, come on, let's try a little bit at least. And so I think Green, I mean, sometimes we say, oh, you got to be creative. You got to be your own self. But at the same time, do what your boss is asking. I mean, part of your job, and this might sound funny, but you're there to make your boss look good. Because if your boss looks good, you look good. And that's how you that's how you get promoted. That's how you do well. So I think it's important that he says, okay, well, my boss says 10%. I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to make plans. I'm going to make goals to reach his goal. And if he was to take that approach, he may even be able to do it or get very close, and he would impress his boss. And his boss would then impress McDonald. I mean, it's just I think I can just see where Davis is kind of bugged by the lack of optimism.
So there's 2 points that I have. Davis has been asking Green for all these stats and stuff to support his claims and everything on these new clienteles and everything, However, Davis never showed any of the stats to how Green should be able to attain these goals. And then the next thing too is if he's going to be the part of that marketing, shouldn't he have been a part of the decision? However way you look at it, if you got manager, regional, what Davis, and this is coming from my own personal experiences, when I set my sales managers up for their regions and stuff like that, I asked them, all right, this is how much product we have. I need we have to sell this. What do you feel it is? And at that point, you have enabled them the ability to think and to exercise their ability, because they know where they're supposed to, and then they come in and then they buy into their own thing, and then you say, well, and at that point, I think Davis could have said to Green, no, I think you need to be higher. This is why, and he has his numbers. Let the effort be put back on to Green and Green needs to show why he thinks he can only do 8% or 6%. He's like, all right, hear him out. And then as Davis comes in, he's like, no, I think 10% is where we're going to need to be, because this is the X, Y, and Z fall into place, and I need to do this. Will you do this? And at that point, there needs to be a buy-in from Green into Davis's plan, but there is no buy-in right there. All Davis said was, you do as I say, you jump as high as I say, and you don't question. And I think right there is a dictatorship or totalitarianism in a position where this is a newer generation where the new generation, it would have been fine. Managers, back in the 70s, this is my rule, as the new managerial leadership is about evolving, and that's how the new generation is coming into being led by.
Definitely, I think it was in the reading. He said, Davis said in one of his meetings that Green conceded to what I said. It sounds like you almost forced Green to say, you need to get these goals, or you need to do this, or you need to do that, which I'm not entirely sure is the most effective way to be a leader. I want to just read something as we kind of start wrapping things up. It's the conclusion of what actually happened. And so just real quick, I'll read this. It says, after McDonald's February 5th, 2008 email, Green took the offensive against his boss. He crafted a series of memorandums, emails, reports, and projections that exposed inaccuracies in creative forecasting. This data enabled Green to build some alliances with other marketing personnel who used the data to ultimately side with him. On April 4th, it was announced that Frank Davis was being moved laterally to an undefined special project. However, Green's tactics were seen as overly brutal by many in the company, and although he won the battle against his boss, his career was irreparably harmed. McDonald distanced herself from him. By July of 2008, Green announced he was resigning from his position to pursue full-time studies for an MBA. So it sounds like, Green maybe got what he wanted as far as he was able to put out the inaccuracies, but definitely went around it in the wrong way, causing harm to what it sounds like as far as Davis. Kind of killed the relationship with McDonald, and then eventually probably brought to his own resigning. And so that was kind of that was a little brief at the end on that one. And then, just as we wrap up, I guess, is there any other questions or thoughts or anything else you guys were putting together?
Do you
It just seemed to me like, go ahead, Patrick.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it seemed to me like it was a blame game the whole way, at least for Green. Like what you had just read, he was so caught up in the 10% margin being so unreachable that became his focus of why he wouldn't do what Davis wanted him to do. And for the 5 months that he was in that position, that was his main focus when working with Davis, is that, I'm not going to work with him because his goals are unattainable. And instead of actually trying to put forth more effort. And it was also interesting to me, it seemed like maybe Green didn't have any training on how to make a chart or a graph to put his words into evidence. So, I don't know, it seemed like the wrong position for him, in my opinion.
Do you think that anything could have been done at that point to fix the situation? Or do you think at that point it's too far gone?
from after this ending deal that I just read? Or
No. The end of the case study where it ended there, where basically the email was sent to McDonald from Davis and then forwarded back to Green. Do you think that it could have been salvaged at that point in a good way?
yeah, so I think, well, a couple things. I think McDonald needs to go first to Davis and help him understand how to build up Green constructively. It sounds like he's just kind of tearing him down. Hey, you're not good at this. You suck at this. You need to get this done. This needs to happen. I would imagine with Green's ability within the company, there's got to be something good he's doing. But in those interviews and emails, none of that is ever brought out. And so I think sometimes you have to build, but you can also critique. And I think Davis was just kind of jumping down Green's throat, saying, "Do this, do this, do this." So I think if maybe McDonald, before approaching Green, goes to Davis and says, "Look, I just want you to construct your meetings like this a little bit, change this a little bit, and let's see where it goes." And kind of going along with what Jack said, I think Green needs to be taught some more. You know, he missed, I think they're saying somewhere in the range of like 2 years apiece on each of those employee deal, or each of those steps up. He was like 20 something, and most of those
22.
guys that were a senior exec were like 40. So you're telling me like 15, 20 years, give or take some. I mean, he probably missed out on a lot that he had to learn. So, I mean, yeah, at some point, you know, you go to Davis and you tell him critique your meetings, but then you also go to Green and say, "Okay, if you want to be the best at this position, we're gonna have to teach you some things." And I think that the relationships all the way around could have been salvaged. I definitely think Green went about it completely incorrect, as far as publicly saying all these inaccuracies and things like that. I think that's just a conversation between you and your boss saying, "Look, this is why I think it's incorrect. Here's the data. You've always asked me for data and hard numbers. Let me show you what I've looked up and figured out."
Yeah, I agree.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's basically it as far as this case study. I don't know if anybody else has anything else.
Nope.
Right on. And then just real quick before we stop, who's up for next week? That way we're all on the same page.
I think it's me.
You? Okay, perfect. And then I'll go ahead and I'll post this, and then I'll send it in an email to everybody also. That way you guys have it. But yeah, other than that, I think we're good, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Keaton.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, guys.
See you next week.
All right.
All right.
Sounds good.